Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Wine and Spirits Exhibition. The 54th edition of Vinitaly was held from the 10th to the 13th of April. If you missed it, don't worry. Go to vinitalyplus.com for on-demand recordings of all the sessions from the exhibition.
Hello, everybody. My name is Polly Hammond, and you are listening to Uncorked, the Italian wine podcast series about all things marketing and communication. Join me each week for candid conversations with experts from within and beyond the wine world as we explore what it takes to build a profitable business in today's constantly shifting environment. Today, we sit down with David James, the man who, as far as I'm concerned, runs the finest social media account in wine. David is an award-winning editorial and fashion photographer. He's got a PhD in cognitive psychology, and he's one of the smartest marketers I know. Today, we talk about storytelling, great photography, and what it means to capture the essence of a brand and the attention of your audience without being fixated on what's in the bottle. Let's get into it. David, thank you so much for being here. Hi.
Thank you, Polly, for having me here. It's been a long time trying to get this going. I'm very grateful, actually. Thank you.
You know, the funny thing about it is that when we think about it's been a long time coming, you and I have actually been trying to sit down for, at this point, 3 years?
Yes.
4 years?
I think 4 years.
Way pre-podcast.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And way pandemic has taken 2 years out of, and then I think 2 years before that, I had attended a digital marketing seminar that you did here in Marlborough for, and I guess a range of wine companies attended, and
you were one of my only engaged audience members. That was the thing. Is I was like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing.
Well, I felt validated, because I'd been doing Misty Cove's social media for a while, and I sort of felt like out there alone a little bit, and like, I knew we were doing something different when we started, and I really loved using Instagram as a platform to at least tell the brand story of Misty Cove. But I felt like Misty Cove was at that time, and still was, a younger company. We were sort of just doing it, just feeling our way through it. And so when I tuned up to your course, the seminar, I was like, oh, wow, I'm doing all of the stuff that Polly says I should be doing. And I felt totally validated by, I was like, oh, okay, I'm doing it right. So don't be scared.
You're like, I'm okay. I'm good. So just for the sake of the listeners, one of the things that was really important to me about getting you on, and I said this when I was talking to Stevie Kim and we were first starting the series, is I have consistently said that you run what I think is the best example of wine Instagram, wine social media that we can find. And I know a lot of that comes from your background, but and this applies to what you're saying about sitting in that room, with a bunch of other marketers. I always equate good marketing to kind of like being a good friend maker, because that's really what we're doing. As the marketers, we're the advocates for the customer in the room, but we're also the person who's making friends with our audience and our community. And a lot of what we do can be, I don't want to say overthought like it's a bad thing, but it's important that we consider what we do, but it's not clinical. These are real people that we're dealing with, and we have real emotions, and, brands have personality. And when we try to make that into something that is corporate or clinical or so process heavy, it's just boring as fuck, man. So that's why you're here. So for everyone who's listening, if they want to now immediately go run to their phones and see what we're talking about, You run the Instagram account as well as other social media, but Instagram is the one that really, really shines because you're a professional photographer for Misty Cove Wines.
That's
and
true.
That's the @ So they can look it up while we talk now. Yeah. So you kind of fell into that position. Is that right? You didn't go out into the world to be a social media star.
That's correct. I'd done some photography for them earlier on for their website, and I'd actually done Andrew Bailey, who is the founder of Misty Cove. I had shot his wedding. He thought I was an absolute hoot, and I still do wedding photography as well. But they just asked me to get some content here and there for their website, and then they did a canned wine campaign, for example. They got me to do photos for that, and they had another company handling the social media, and at the time the salesperson was I think it's typical with a lot of wine companies, maybe just companies in general, like especially ones that are a bit more established, is like they get, they've got a marketer, and then they hire a content creator, and then they get the content, and then they
that's
the
siloing.
Instagram, and then they write copy, and it was I think for them it felt I think we all agreed it was a fairly slow process, and that someone on the ground who has a writing ability, and I'd done some journalism for the local paper when I arrived in Marlborough, and I also had the photo stuff, and they said, well, why don't you come on board?
You're in.
Yeah, so there was a retainer situation sorted out. I don't want to get too contractual stuff, but it meant that I just do stuff for Misty Cove, and that's it. And I don't think anyone else in Marlborough had really, or any wine company had hired just a content creator at all, someone who just goes around, takes photos, and writes shit on their Instagram. And so I think in that seminar where there was there were a lot of people looking for answers or boxes to tick on how to run an Instagram. And I know that you said, don't mess about, just take your marketing budget that you would spend on a billboard and just hire a content creator for a year and see your audience grow and your followers grow. And it's real, authentic, and it's someone on the ground. I think people know when it's, some Auckland company has come flowing down and done it for them, and then created all this content, and it just feels real. I thought it felt disingenuous. A lot of wine marketing campaigns look disingenuous to me. It's two middle-aged white people walking through a vineyard, and it's a sunset, and there's blah blah blah, and who does that? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just
it's totally true. Yeah. The hands with grapes, the soil, the sweeping vistas of the vineyard, and I have the same thing for sites that I'm just like, no, we're not using this. Before we hit record, we were talking about the fact that you are so unassuming, and you have a PhD in cognitive psychology. And you are on the storytelling and marketing end of brands these days. So I kind of want to start with that. I mean, it's something that also we haven't brought up is you are an award-winning fashion and editorial photographer. So, that's going to come up in these discussions, but, you're a part of culture with the work that you do, from food, wine, beverage, fashion, editorial, and you've got this really big brain around psychology. Are you using the psych background and training when you are developing your ideas, your stories, or campaigns?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I don't, a lot of the stuff that I did was, I couldn't clinically use it. Like I wasn't interested in behaviorism or clinical psychology or anything like that. It was more, I was far more interested in the intersection between biology and cognition, or biology and the evolution of the human brain. So I was very much interested in primate intelligence. What makes humans unique is a lot of our instinctual native behaviors, like fear of, the basic ones are like, fear of spiders, xenophobia, our ability for language. These are sort of all seem to be very native traits that are inborn, not culturally learned. So they kind of come, straight out of the box, if you will. There's no instruction manual for it. We come equipped with some pretty good hardware to deal with the world. And that fascinated me. And I think because I'd spent some time with a lot of academics who were, I suppose, for lack of better words, postmodernist kind of scholars. I was looking for in postmodernism, it's sort of all relative and it's all subjective and it's all like, what does it mean? It's just you. It's all very individualist. And so I think I was looking for something that was more pan-human. I knew that there was facts and a truth out there that I guess that was common to humanity, and I found that really fascinating. The biological foundation for human behavior and culture for me was just like, whoa, that's amazing. Because one of the things that I really got interested in was religion, because I'd grown up in a Pentecostal Christian home. I'm not religious myself anymore. I sort of left the church when I started listening to Metallica. As soon as I started listening to Metallica and Guns N' Roses, I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm done. I found my God. But I'd found it quite interesting. And one of the things cognitive psychologists look at when they look at culture, they look at ubiquitous kind of common features. So while religions, for example, I'll take the example for religion, they look different. Buddhism looks different to Christianity and Islam and Judaism, but there are some common features in it, like anthropomorphic gods, life after death, purity rituals, all of these things which seem to be really common, and we almost intuitively gravitate towards, explanations, supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. So I just was like, wow, that's so cool. And so if you think about it like a cake, cakes look different, but it's all the same ingredients, if you will. And so I found that quite interesting, how cognitive psychologists were using the tools from science to study culture and the kind of the themes in culture and stuff like that. And, you could look at it. Carl Jung was, I'm sorry if I'm getting really heavy here. Carl Jung, the psychologist, student of Freud, was really interested in archetypes as well. Like if you love Star Wars, our friend George Lucas read Joseph Campbell's A Hero with a Thousand Faces. And now that is a Jungian sort of psychological analysis of human culture. What we find in stories and storytelling is these kind of common archetypes and everything that we are intuitively gravitate towards. And so George Lucas wrote Star Wars based on the structure laid out in Hero with a Thousand Faces. He's like, there are actual really, there's a hero, villains. I can't remember the archetypes, but
hold on. I've got to say, nobody's going to believe that this is not a setup, because I talk about the hero's journey in all of my storytelling work. Like I have a whole thing that we talk about that's about we're not the hero in the story. We're the magician. These are the archetypes. Yeah. This is the pathway. So please continue, because I want to talk about storytelling, and we are on the same page. So we're talking about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. and
all of that
how
stuff.
that plays into psychology, but then also in, I use that every day in marketing.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're kind of thinking about when you're working with your clients, or is it just so a part of your knowledge that you don't think about it, you just do it?
Yeah, so going back to your original question, I don't, and I don't know if I do or not intuitively do it. I don't sit down with a pen and paper and structure kind of like, I don't know, a brand story around, the hero's journey or anything like that. But I think one of the things you can do in social media, for example, if you have people, in your team or whatever, do define them as characters, make them really clear characters, and introduce them really simply. Or I guess like have some kind of an emotional quality to those people that you might, like staff member or something like that. But to answer your question, I don't set out intentionally to apply any psychological tools that I've learned in university to what I do at all. It might be just, intuitive.
It's just in your brain.
Yeah. I wish it was intentional.
So the audiogram on that little bit is hire people who already know this stuff, right? Like it's part of what we choose when we hire, is that all that retained knowledge and experience that comes with them. So I want to talk about storytelling, because one of the things that I have always loved about your work, whether it's the editorial work or whether it's, the social media campaigns, is that there is a real audience focused storytelling that goes on. Like I said, generally, what do you think about the presentation of, or the effectiveness, the direction of storytelling in wine these days?
That's a really, I was thinking about this question actually, and it's storytelling or telling a story is kind of, it feels like it's become a bit of a buzzword in marketing and stuff like that. Like, let us tell your story, your brand story. And like, it feels like it's kind of like a marketing tool for marketers to attract a new client. I want my story told. And I kind of like, there's something in the back of my head that's kind of like going, bullshit, for some reason, lately.
Yep.
And because it's overused, that term, it's all about authentically telling your story. And I don't know, I still don't know what that means. And I don't know what authenticity looks like at all. I think, and I don't know what storytelling is. I think you feel it or you don't. I like doing things that kind of capture people's imagination. And I think that's the best way to describe the photos and the words that I do, when the writing and the imagery that I do. If I can make people excited or just kind of get their imagination like working, it and resonate I guess personally resonating with any kind of post that I do. For example, if I'm doing a social media post, I don't know. I think there's something on my shoulder all the time saying, "Is this bullshit? Are you for real? Like, how do you make this real? Like, how do make it real as much as possible?" And so, I think that goes back to when you were talking about social media is all about making friends. It's like, talk to the people like, eye to eye.
Like we talk now.
Yeah, like you talk now, and that's kind of authenticity. So, I think, so I'll push that aside about my critique of story, but I will say, storytelling is really important. Having a good narrative, a voice is so important with the copy that you write in social media.
I do want to return to storytelling, but specific to voice. How do you do that? So in your case, you are paid to come in and do the social media for another brand. It's not your brand. you have an awesome voice for the brand. How does a client get there with their providers, with their content creators? How can they empower you to do better?
Well, that is the key question right there, because I think and the word empowerment is so crucial to all of this. I don't think there is there's no paint by numbers approach at all. But Misty Cove said to me, you see all those people walking in wineries on sunsets and holding grapes and swilling glasses of wine? Don't do that. Just do the opposite of all of that. Be rogue, be rebel, be like straight out of the gate, crazy as much as possible within reason. I've done some pretty push the boundaries a few times. Just do something different because it's so boring. Everything's boring. And so that was their brief for me. It was like, just don't be boring. And so I was like, I can do that. And I think there is a real rebellious spirit in me. I've always been a bit naughty.
You think? No.
Yeah. I've always been a bit naughty. And I like that. I think it's I like seeing stony faces going, what the hell's going on? Yeah.
Because I think that sometimes what we forget, and this is sort of reverting back to storytelling, what we forget is the purpose of some of what we do is to capture their attention long enough that they stay with us, that they read more, that they click through. And if our very first presentation, which is with the, visually, is boring, they're just going to roll right over it. Nobody's going to stop, so that notion of, it's not necessarily that we all have to be rogue or we all have to be quirky or whatever, but it's more that we need to know how we're going to stand out.
Yes, that's exactly it. And going back to storytelling, I think we're all of us natural born storytellers because, we order our experience, which is, like if you could think about the amount of information and data that your brain is actually like processing right now and ordering into an experience, it's enormous, but there's a whole lot of redundancy around that, you'd be overwhelmed otherwise. And I think we structure our worlds and our experience and narratives so naturally. It's just sort of part of who we are as humans. It's just, there's a difference between good storytelling and bad storytelling.
I completely agree with you, by the way, on it's become a buzzword and a lot of marketers talk about it and don't have a friggin' clue. And that's unfair. I shouldn't really rip on the marketers. I think that as most marketers don't want to say, this is bullshit. Authenticity is there such a thing as authentic marketing if you're paying someone to do it? That there are challenges inherent in what we're trying to devise. The issue with storytelling, couple things that I notice working with independent brands. If it's not right, you know it. Like, you have to be able to stand there and own your story. And that is ultimately what I'm aiming for with authenticity, is that I know when I'm bullshitting. We all know when we tell lies. When we know when something resonates with us, when it feels right in our bones. And those are the stories that we ourselves can tell with passion and joy and emotion because it matters to us. If a story doesn't matter to you, it's not going to matter to anybody else because we cannot convey it, in a way that carries any of that emotion with us. It's just kind of us going off on our little marketer's tangent. But that's the reason that I use the hero's journey, is that we can be so enamored by our own thing that we don't stop and think about, well, who is this story for and about? And just remembering, think that your audience is, I do the whole Star Wars thing too. Your audience is Luke. You are Yoda. You're the magician making their life fabulous because you're giving them the wine that impresses the boss, impresses the date, solves the problem, makes the perfect meal, whatever it might be in that moment. So this comes down to audience. Like in my, in an agency space, we go through a ton of qualitative and quantitative research, blah, 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 on who the audience is. When you sit down to do this for your wine brands or your fashion brands or anyone, how much are you like working through the audience, or how much of it is instinct?
I think as a person, and it might come from being wily a little bit, a bit of a survivor, having worked in hospo, having come from, a background in addiction, that I've got.
Not being 22, you have life experiences.
Yeah, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I just think I've gained a lot of really good social intelligence over the years. I've always been really empathetic and really sensitive, ever since I was young. I think that's just something I've just, my mum always used to say, "You got to toughen up, Dave. You've got to toughen up. The world's, sometimes the world feels incredibly overwhelming." And so I do feel people, and I do, in that respect, I feel an audience as well. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm selling shit to people. And I think that's the most important thing, is like, how do you sell wine without trying to sell it to people? Like, you know what I mean? This is a delicious drop, perfect with your friends on a beach. It would be nice. It's like, I just kind of want to vomit when I hear that. It's just, I think the human experience is just so much more interesting and far more complex. And with that, I think humor has been really important with the Misty Cove stuff, and not
erudition and serious.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they really wanted to go against the wine snobbery stuff and use a lot of colloquial language. And that suited me down to the ground, because I find all of that stuff, again, conversational when you're talking to someone on the level. And that's empathy right there, I suppose. I'm still finding it hard to really encapsulate and articulate the storytelling element and how to explain that. I wish I could bottle it and write it down and tell people, this is how you do it. But I think you're right. I think knowing your audience is really important, that there is someone listening. You've got to be empathetic to those readers and those listeners, because being an Instagram consumer like myself, and I think, and a social media consumer, I know what makes me stop, and I know what makes me like stop scrolling. I was like, I want to go there. And so I'm always looking at what made me stop on that post, what made me engage with that. How can I bring that out? And into the work that I do.
Yeah. So I think that there are a couple things there that are important. So yes, understanding that storytelling is hard, and the notion that we want to simplify it, or that it's packageable, is probably one of the biggest problems that we face in marketing, because it takes time, it takes money, it takes experimentation. If you're going to outsource it, right? The learning has to happen. So we have to own that somehow that's going to happen. But the other thing that really stood out to me on that is, you said, as a consumer of Instagram, right? As someone who actually engages with this all the time, I think this is another problem, is that because of demographics, age, whatever it may be, busyness. We have a lot of brands that they themselves don't use the platforms in their personal, private, everyday life. And so they don't have any of that like native learning that we gain through constantly working with the tools ourselves.
Yes. Can I just go back and just make a point before I what you brought up there was really interesting because, and one of the things that I've learned along the way about Instagram and its and the storytelling and all of that stuff is that oftentimes what will happen is a client will come to me and say, "Oh, love what you do for this company, let's do that," and then they'll give it 3 months and it's like, "No, nothing's working. We're not selling anything," and there's a couple of problems with that. And first of all, social media, digital marketing in general is a long game. Secondly, I think it's a bit of a black box. It's a bit of like black arts. You're not. There is no direct conversion. Like accounts departments hate us for a reason because they don't see conversions. They don't go, well, you posted that and we didn't sell anything. I think social media is about sitting in your soul, is about creating something to sit in somebody else's soul and live there. And I think for that reason alone, it's an exceptionally good marketing tool because you have a living brand story, and over time, you develop a language, you develop a story, you develop a narrative. You got to do it for longer than 3 months, baby. That's what I think, And so I think that's the most important thing that's been really a successful part of Mystic Cove and some of the other brands that I've stayed with for a while is they understand it's a long game and they might not sell shit, but hell, people know who they are. All of a sudden, our sales guy is calling Canada and they're like, "We love your brand story," he doesn't have to tell them about Mystic Cove anymore. He doesn't have to tell them the story because it's living there, in digital world. Yeah. And I think that's cool. He doesn't have to go, "Well, Mystic Cove are about this and we're really rogue and rebellious and da-da-da." And while that's something that, some of our philosophy, you got to express it on a regular basis and mean it too.
People look at social media and say, cheap, easy, free. Miracle. And I'm like, that good social media isn't cheap. It's not easy. It's not fast. It's not free. Like it's not a miracle. Any brand that's running really successful organic social media, that was fucking work. Someone did the work.
There has been a lot of work. For example, with Mystic Cove, absolutely. There's been a lot of time and effort put into it. And so, I think earlier on, especially, people were like, well, are we selling wine? What's when you were talking about metrics before, what's the conversion? And, it's sort of just one of those places you just kind of dump money or time, and time is money really, because you got to pay someone to do it. You dump money into it, time, whatever, and what are the results? And so, when you went with that scenario, you're going to the client and saying, this is probably the most expensive marketing platforms that you can engage with. Oh, absolutely. And I think also once you start, you can't stop. You can't just go, we'll just leave it for a month. We'll come back. You gotta. That's it. You gotta go. You can't stop. It looks bad if you do.
Talk about metrics. We'll go back to it. What metrics? Okay. What metrics do you care about?
So I think for the first few years with Mystic Cove, they really wanted to see a report. This is more like showing the shareholders growth of followers. They want to see a growth of followers. Very important, reach, impressions, all of that stuff. And so I use later.com to do all my scheduling, and they provide really good analytics in there and really good information. And so I can actually tell them, what was the most popular post of the month. And we can get an idea then of, what's working and what's not. And so, we were seeing things like some of the landscape photography doing really well, with their international audience. And then photos of Andrew Bailey and his family, the founder, and that just takes off. Some of that real family stuff and authenticity was showing some excellent results. What I learned was it's the emotional quality of the images and stuff like that sometimes that people respond to the most. And I was quite fascinated by seeing those metrics. What the company wanted to see was growth. What I like to see was quality of engagement around what photos were working and what weren't. So, and now we've kind of got an idea that we haven't been doing many social media reports at all, and more focusing on our Google Analytics with our website and stuff like that, and sales, because we know that our social media is just up and running now, and we know what works and what doesn't. So, and on top of that, social media has changed. You pay to play now. If you want engagement, you got to boost the post. I find it's only happened in the last year and a half, 2 years, I think. Some people just aren't seeing a Facebook post at all. And we're in the past.
Facebook are dicks as well.
They're dicks. Yeah, in the past, I'd post a photo and we get 50 likes. Now we might get 2. It's weird. So they want you to spend the money. So metrics for me earlier on was really important. And I think it's actually, if I was going to recommend it to anyone else, pay for the pro subscription on later.com and just get involved in the numbers and just see what's working and what's not working. It's really interesting to know your audience. We were looking at our audience, we were like, it would switch between 80% female some months and then, of various demographics. But we generally found that we were really attractive to the 25 to 34-year-olds, which was, a younger audience. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we wanted. And so, So the other thing too for marketers starting out, find out when your people are on their phones, because the later actually will tell you when your audience is on their phone the most. And oftentimes it's in the evening. I handle a retail company, and it's a department store here in Marlborough, and most of their engagement is in the evening. I would say about 8 o'clock, the kids have gone to bed. They're sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through their phones. Oh, I might buy that. And so know your audience and sort of when they're on their phones the most, and then you can know where to post as well. Those are the things that I really felt were super handy with the metric stuff. Don't discard it at all. The creativity stuff is great, but that the analytics are also really important. That really helps.
So every time we do anything that has to do with social media, I just get deluged by practical questions. So we're going to run through this in a sort of fast way.
Yep.
Planning. Do you plan other than later? Like how far in advance do you plan? Or have you just done it for so long that it's kind of natural?
It is kind of natural. I don't schedule posts. I try not to do a week or 2 weeks in advance. It just feels like, man, I've just not. It's just so stupid to do that. And I know people say, you've got to schedule and it's fine and it takes. I find that then I'm not checking the actual real time engagement on the phones at all. I'm just sort of letting it run, and it feels like I'm kind of a bit out of touch with it. That's what I find.
Right. You're phoning it in.
Yeah, I'm happy to do 3 days in advance. Say, for example, since I know there's a plan where we're going to be promoting this wine, we're promoting the cellar door accommodation, and then some harvest photos and stuff like that. Happy to do 3 days, but I really like to come back and have a look at how many likes there are, what the engagement does in real time, and so yeah, that's a personal preference for me. But people can schedule, the whole month if they want to. It's fine, but I just think it feels, I don't know, disassociative or something like that.
So I have clients who do both, and sometimes it just has to do with if the only way that we can have consistent communication is to have 90, 60, 30, whatever it is, 15 pre-scheduled posts, go for it. Like a lot of times for me, it's just saying, well, what systems allow it to go forward? What about things like captions? Because I can labor over caption writing or email writing. Like, do you spend a lot of time really thinking deeply about what the caption is going to be? Or is it very much just like what would I say in this moment? Move on.
Yeah, I definitely what's in the moment. And that's why I really like doing things, not going. The other thing I find, if I schedule in a couple of weeks in advance, I burn out with caption writing. If I'm sitting there and just writing, it just starts to sound like it loses its spark and energy. And so, like, I sometimes I like to come in and just feel fresh about just writing something really energetic and punchy. And I really, sometimes it's just like, there will just be some words in my head. I kid you not. There'll be just some words in my head and I write it down on the caption and I write a caption around those words. And it's kind of like throwing the dice. It creates, it feels fresh. It's random, not random, but you know what I mean. It feels like I'm not doing the same old thing over and over again. Like I just throw some words in and let's do a caption around those words or that energy or that sentence. Sometimes I'll just use some onomatopoeia like screech, yo, what's up? Hey, check this out, kind of thing. I wouldn't do that, but
yeah, I get it.
Just sort of just silly things. Sometimes it's just, and it feels, for me, it feels fresh, and I'm far more proud of doing that kind of stuff than just going, you can buy our wine now in New World.
Right.
$19.95 and it just feels
dark berries and a hint of this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you will love this with. You know what goes great with Sauvignon Blanc? Seafood. Seafood goes great with Sauvignon Blanc. You should get some seafood and some Sauvignon Blanc. And I did a seafood post today. But the thing I did was really cool. I actually said there's a really cool local fishmonger in town called Guyton's. You can buy some fucking good oysters from and just chuck some oysters back with some Sauvignon Blanc. It's great. But, I think it's just the way you say it, there's just, you've seen it.
And it's also longevity. I think that's one of the things we're really coming back to is that you can do the kind of off the wall posts because there's so much of it. It's so regular. You're sharing bits and pieces all the time. Whereas if you're not actively in these channels, every one of those just gets sort of weighed down with need. Okay, so hashtags.
I'll just follow that up. I had to look up her name because I read the book a long time ago. Julia Cameron, she wrote a book called The Artist's Way, and she encourages people just to wake up in the morning and just write in their diary whatever's in their head. It could be their dreams or whatever. It's just sort of random writing, and that's sort of how I learned to write, was kind of intuitively. And it sounds really kind of woo-woo, but it's
a practice.
It's a practice. It kind of helps you connect your head with your hands, in a way, and it gives you confidence over the writing, because as soon as you launch into something, you've just got to go all in. Sometimes you can't hold the brakes and go, oh, what am I saying? I don't know what I'm saying. Is it wrong? You've just got to go, let's just keep writing and see what I'm about to say. I don't know what I'm about to say, but I think it's going to be good. So I just sort of, sometimes I do that free association writing and it kind of works. And then I just, yeah.
Again, the thing that I hear when you say that is this is about trust and agency. So hire people who you trust or build a relationship with that you trust them, and then give them the agency, empower them to do these things. Because when you're working through like really heavy approval, like multi-channel approval workflows, it's just dead. It's dead by the time you do it. And it's dead. So allowing that spark.
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I've had a couple of social media clients that like, can you run the post by me? And then I'll run it up the ladder to somebody else. And by that time, the week's gone, like the immediacy's gone. You got to let people do it, their thing. Having said that, our EDMs are scrutinized because last thing you want is a spelling mistake.
Yeah.
At least you can, and
not
you send it out to 5,000 people. At least you can go back and fix a typo in Instagram or something like that.
You can archive it. You can delete it. Once that email's out in the world, it's out there forever.
That's it.
That's true. And that's really valid. It's not without care. Like, I don't think I want people to take away that anything is just, you kind of flick it off. That's not it at all. It's more that understanding what is important in that particular channel. And for something like social media, contemporaneous, immediate, addressing what's going on in our macro or micro world is super important. What about things like hashtags? Do you care?
Not so much anymore. Used to. I used to even do first comments and stuff like that. I think I care more about it with Misty Cove than I do with my other clients. For example, I handle a bar and a restaurant. Now, they're just focused on letting the locals know there's a steak special on Saturday. No one's following steak special hashtag, in Guatemala, and you're thinking, wow, I want to go there. But I think if you do stuff, what I like about Misty Cove is that it lets me do a range of different images. So, for example, I can do landscapes. So I will do stuff like hashtag nature photography. Like we do a Sauvignon Blanc that's a Sur Lee. And so I will use Sur Lee, if I talk about this particular Sauvignon Blanc. Yeah, I do use hashtags a fair bit for Misty Cove, and they work. I think they do. And I just know what to use. I just won't go wine, Sauvignon Blanc. Try and be specific as you can, or like attract the nerd audience as much as possible, because they're the ones that are following the hashtags, not your regular consumer. Yeah, I think.
What about things like community building? Do you actually sit on the accounts, grow the accounts by looking at who's paying attention to it, engage in lots of back and forth replies and conversation? Or is it more like you make the post and then you move on to the next post?
Love it. If people share stories about the wine and stuff like that, I am all over that. I share it. I ask for the raw video, and the photo. I can use it again. People really appreciate that, I think. And if somebody tags us in a post, I have to comment. And if somebody comments on the post, definitely commenting, like absolutely woohoo, even if it is an emoji. I've seen with other wineries, I don't have to name names, but the hundreds of comments. Oh, this looks great. Oh, we love your wine company. Not a single reply on or any of them. So I look at that and I go, that is just dumb. That is dumb. And I know you've already got 10,000 followers, so you don't care. But come on, it's social media. So it's social.
So a couple things that I do want to talk about. And one of them is the editorial photography work that you do, the fashion and the beauty. It is non-traditional. We've got a lot of gender fluidity. We've got a lot of brands that are breakout brands. How much does that influence your thinking and planning around wine, how we talk, who our audiences are? Is there a overlap in your head?
It's the fashion work that I do is everything to me. It's the core of it is the place where I go and learn, I think, and I bring back and it reinvigorates everything else that I do with my other clients, because I'm lucky enough to have access and opportunity to work with really, fringe brands, really cool Kiwi like labels and stuff like that are, just creating a new language all the time,
Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about fashion. It always has to be new. There's not, it's gone tomorrow. You do one shoot, it's gone. People have forgotten about it next week. So everyone's always thinking about something new, always trying to be innovative, trying to get people's attention. And I don't mean that, in a disingenuous way at all. I think it's more just it's again, it's like creating a new language to speak. And so when I'm kind of in those worlds, I bring back a lot of the resources from those worlds to Misty Cove and everything like that. And I think that's where I have aligned with their rebellious spirit, and I think I brought a lot of that edgy, for lack of a better word, edgy kind of alternative-y kind of vibe. Fuck, I hate those words, but
yeah,
but more
non-traditional. I mean, it's just
non-traditional.
It's not boring.
It's not boring.
It's not boring, and non-traditional in a wine sense.
Yeah.
Like it's just not what other wine brands were doing.
Absolutely, and I am lucky that Misty lets me do it as well. They're like, yeah, Dave, you just do that. Within reason, but they're pretty happy most of the time. Yeah, so the fashion stuff I love.
The fashion stuff you love. All right. Last question.
Yes.
That I really want us to have time to talk about this. So this is all we'll focus on from here on out. You don't drink. You run social media. You run what I think is the most badass wine social media account, and you don't drink.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think I can't help but think that maybe it's the fact that you don't drink that allows you to see beyond this thing that we're all so consumed by, which is what's the quality of what's in the bottle.
Yes.
How does not drinking change your relationship with the storytelling and the messaging and the community?
Well, I think I've thought about this question a lot, especially on an ethical level, because I am a recovering addict and alcoholic. Here I am working in an industry that peddles booze. We can get highfalutin about the wine as much as possible. Oh, the notes of watermelon and the cucumber, but people get plastered on it. So let's get real. And I've thought about this question a lot, and I think I always use this anecdote. I think it's an anecdote. I don't know, or example. I could be allergic to peanuts, but I would tell a great story about a peanut butter brand. I would love, I could tell I could tell a great story about peanut butter, even though I couldn't eat it. If that makes sense. I think there's just so much more to wine than the sommeliers and the tasting and the swirling and all of that stuff. I think there's people, there's a culture. I'm right here. I'm at the Misty Cove offices right now, and I'm a contractor. So I'm not actually an employee of Misty Cove, but I think it's really important for me to be here on a regular basis, be around the people, the culture, the winemakers, all of that stuff, because they make me happy. You know, I think it's a lot of fun. I wish in many ways, you know, people are just funny. You know, you could almost, I reckon, a sitcom. I would love, you know, like the Office version of a winery with like winemakers, you know, like the artistic temperament and the ego, and you know.
This is your next mission.
Yeah.
Is that you can do that for us? YouTube series.
Yeah, exactly.
Be fabulous.
The accounts guy, like, kill me. How much money is this going to cost to develop a vineyard?
The marketers sitting in the back room bitching amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's just the marketing. I don't know.
I love it.
It's just cool, and I think there's so much you can tell. And I think that's the thing. So I've tried to angle all of the language and all of the imagery for Misty Cove as much as I can. You know. The non-wine stuff as well, the people, the culture, the landscapes, the harvest, you know, all of that stuff is really cool. And I tell you what, I love Marlborough. When I first moved here, I just fell in love with the region, the lights, the people. It's just a warm, good place to be. The people here are fantastic. So I have no trouble in talking about Marlborough in general and living here and the people that create wine here. And so around all the ethical stuff, I think it's still, I still ask this question some mornings. I'll get out of the shower and I was like, you know, I know people who drink far too much still, and they might drink wine far too much. Is this the right thing to do? You know, like I think, is this an ethically responsible thing to do?
David, I think that if we're working as wine marketers and we're not asking ourselves that question from time to time, there's something wrong with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
David, thank you so much. What the audience can't see is that this interview has been rife with connectivity issues. I'm really grateful to you. I love getting to talk to you because you and I think similarly on so many things.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for listening, and an enormous thanks to David for joining me from Marlborough, New Zealand tonight. I'm so glad we were able to finally make this happen. The Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with daily episodes. Tune in each day and discover all our different shows. And be sure to join us next Sunday for another look at the world of wine marketing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Italian Wine Podcast, brought to you by Vinitaly International Wine and Spirits Exhibition, the biggest drinks trade fair in the world. Remember to subscribe to Italian Wine Podcast and catch us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and wherever you get your pods. You can also find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com.
Hi guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.